Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Today our parasha is Ki Tavo, and our message was written today by Mauricio Quintero, and I will read the translation in English. The title is Strive, Do Not Give Up. This portion, Ki Tavo, contains many treasures from which I would like to present a few central themes. The first theme, the Israelites were invited to remember His divine protection at all times, going from a past that they didn't know, when it says that an Aramean wanted to kill their ancestor, to overcoming the dangers that they lived through in order to finally reach the crowning moment of entering and possessing the land that they had been promised. Of course, they were to remember to thank the Eternal for receiving the first fruit of the earth, which they were to bring to the place that the Eternal chose. We read that in chapter 26. It's not so much because God needs fruit, but that He is pleased with the grateful hearts of those who give. The second theme, it's written in chapter 27, verses 1 to 8, that the commandments must be carved onto large stones and placed where they could be seen by anyone entering the land. The custom was very common at that time, when the Hammurabi Code was, when the laws of the land were written on trails on the roads where the people traveled, in such a way that the displayed stones imparted that they were eternal laws, overcoming time with much more enduring material. They became public law, displayed to any traveler on the road in such a way that ignorance could not be an excuse. The same idea was applied to Israel so that travelers knew their laws and customs. That is to say, it was a way of socializing the Torah. The third theme, the Levites had to proclaim the blessings and the apparent curses, since we can't say that curses come from heaven, but rather are conductors for us to rectify our paths. We read that in 27:15 to 28:69. On Mount Ebal, there were 6 tribes, Reuben, Gad, Asher, Zebulun, Dan, and Naphtali. They were placed to proclaim the curses. And on Mount Gerizim, the other 6 tribes, Shimon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Joseph, and Benjamin, were to proclaim the blessings. The central theme was the acceptance by the people of these proclamations when they all said, Amen, which means so be it. The fourth theme, Moses reminded them of the miracles they had witnessed in the desert and ordered them to observe the mitzvot so that they would succeed in whatever their heart desired to undertake. From these, I would like to focus on the following idea that has continuously come up for me during the week. It gives us a glimpse that we must strive and take action that are aimed at being different than others. During the week, I've had certain situations that have been very difficult for me to assimilate. Perhaps the one that made me think the most referred to an excellent service provider to our companies for about 15 years, who projected light. I unfortunately learned was not so transparent. We were summoned to a meeting in our offices by the president of this company, who obtained the results of their internal audits. And to our surprise, the person who he admired and respected professionally had stolen thousands of dollars from his company, had mistreated his employees, and had even stolen part of their salaries. I asked myself, how is it possible that this person could have reached this level, this point in his life? He had a good job, and without judging him, I just couldn't believe it. I was shocked and saddened because he was someone I respected. Here's another story. Many years ago, the president of a very large insurance corporation in my country and in Central America, who used to live very close to our home, was fired after working in his industry for more than 30 to 40 years. This was a turning point in our relationship because as a result, they moved far away from us. A relative of ours who worked for this corporation told us that the reason for his dismissal was that over many years, he had embezzled millions of dollars from the company. He did not go to jail because they made an internal agreement with him so that the company would not go bankrupt. However, it was sad to discover that he had embezzled and had also, on top of that, built a room for sexual encounters within the company, which were only discovered once he left. All this reminded me of the wise words of Rav Shaul, who said in 1 Corinthians 10, verse 12, "Let anyone who thinks he is standing firm be careful that he does not fall." Excuse me. I think that's exactly the problem we all face in life. We come to believe that reaching the promised land is the goal, the end, when it is really only the beginning of the journey. If we look at this in practical terms, thinking to ourselves, "Oh, I know biblical Judaism. I'm already succeeded." No, it's only the beginning of your journey. For this reason, the Eternal tells them that when they enter the land and they possess it, inhabit it, and begin to enjoy it, it's at this moment that the words of the Torah must be placed more firmly within each person, because it will become subtler and become easier to fall into deception. In both cases which I mentioned, they were two apparently very blessed people. They had obtained professional and family success, money, social and economic position, power, influence, and they shone brighter than ever. But it was only vanity. It was not coming from their essence. And honestly, they had my respect and admiration, but in the end, I was so disappointed. If we read our portion carefully, we see how effort is implicit. In verse 26:1, when you have entered is personal effort into the land which the Lord your God is giving you as an inheritance, and you shall possess it, personal effort, and dwell in it, personal effort. You shall take, it takes personal effort, of the first fruit of all the produce of the ground, which you gather, again, personal effort, from the land that the Lord your God gives you, and you put them, personal effort, in a basket, and you will go, personal effort, to the place that the Eternal your God will choose to make his name dwell there. And you shall go, again, personal effort, to the high priest who will be in those days, and say to him, again, it takes personal effort, I declare, personal effort, today to the Eternal your God, and I express my gratitude, personal effort, because I have entered the land that the Eternal swore to our fathers that he would give us. We continually see these verbs of actions of personal effort reflected in each passage with examples such as, you will speak aloud, I bring the first fruit, you will prostrate yourself before the Eternal your God, you will rejoice, you will give, I did not eat and have done as you have commanded, and so on, all using verbs that imply effort. Reading the Haftarah portion, I also found implicit effort in Isaiah 60, verse 1, arise and shine. There is a local saying, to God begging, but with a mallet giving. How many people today want to get results without making 1 ounce of effort? We have the choice of not doing, which is disobedience or inaction, a more modern trend nowadays, which will become a curse. People think, don't do, you don't have to try. You can be soft, you can be neutral. It's the way. However, it is as if the Eternal told us, I gave you feet so you can walk. I gave you eyes so that you can see. I gave you 2 ears to hear. I gave you hands to build and to do, to create, to form. I gave you a mouth to speak. He has given us the whole body in order to fulfill his commandments. Unfortunately, society is again at the level expressed by Moshe in chapter 29, verse 3 to Israel, after 40 years of being accompanied constantly by his divine presence. And it says, but to this day, the Eternal has not given you an understanding heart, nor eyes that see, nor ears that hear. The Hebrew word barech is bless. And this is a state above a verb or a noun, a state of well-being, and under his divine protection and favor. The word arar, curse, is completely the opposite. It means to live without favor and divine protection, although the opposite may seem to be reflected. It's interesting that some scholars translate the word used in this portion as trap and bind. I like this connotation because they remained tied to the physical world, trapped in their vanities, even though they deceive the rest of us. To effort, we must add bravery, courage. Often making an effort implies being embarrassed or not being taken into consideration by others because it suggests we are behaving and acting differently. People may not be popular, especially the young, but you have to keep going. Effort is also an inside job because external actions like abstention, control, etc., are just the product of controlling the eternal being, the internal being. Proverbs Mishlei 23, verse 7 says, for as one thinks in his heart, so is he. Also, if we do not add effort, which is implicit, implies a deliberate action to our thoughts, we will not bear fruit. We will just be frustrated. After expanding a little on effort, blessings and curses, I would like to add something that I read this week about the word oneg. We often say oneg Shabbat, the pleasure or the joy of Shabbat, and the word nega, from which the word plague comes. Our sages say, in the word oneg, the ayin, which is the last letter on the right, and in the word plague, nega, it's the last letter on the left. Man has the power, says the chachamim, or the wise ones, to convert oneg into nega by simply switching the ayin. That is, we have the freedom to choose between good and evil. On the other hand, the right hand symbolizes action and strength, while the left symbolizes weakness. Man holds the power of transformation. He can perish before matter or fight and triumph over spirit. You can choose between good and evil, and it's in your hands to transform suffering into happiness, into oneg. According to the Torah, it's not enough to get rid of evil. It must be transformed into good. The immense abilities that man possesses must be at the service of God. If he obeys the voice of the Eternal, blessings will come upon him. Otherwise, he will have to endure the klalot, the curses written in this parasha, in verses 15 to 68, in reference to Devarim, chapter 28. During this month of Elul, we traditionally read Psalm 29, Tehillim, daily. Of David, the Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? God is the strength of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? When we live in his light, striving to obey without fearing the consequences of always doing things the right way, then we will live in a state of happiness, in a state of barech, blessing, in a state of happiness, oneg. My prayer for this Shabbat is that we strive to live the commandments, so that we will be light. We will shine the light of the eternal. We will live safely in peace, in shalom. We will pass from the state of nega to oneg. I encourage you to follow this advice from the scriptures by the prophet Azariah in 2 Chronicles 15:7, where he says, "Therefore, you be strong, stand firm, and do not let your guard down, for your works shall be rewarded." Hallelujah. Shabbat Shalom.